Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 45 of the Lord Ninja Choke MMA Picks podcast. Today, we're going to be giving you our fight focus and our best bets for UFC 325, which is headlined by Alex Volkanovski and Diego Lopes 2. They're having a rematch just a year or so after their first encounter, as the featherweight division is incredibly chaotic at the moment. We've got a whole load of prospects, and some are loved and some are hated. But the UFC have landed on these two to be the ones to unify the belts and get back to having a champion and a little bit more of a linear line through the division's history. So I guess first things first, we'll take a brief overlook at the card and highlight the bouts that we want to be focusing on with this video. So yeah, I mean, looking at it as a whole, first things first, I guess, Josh, I'll start with you. How do you feel about this card? Because I know it's down under where you live, your neck of the woods. So yeah, what do you think? Are you excited for this one as an Aussie?
I wish I was, but I mean, looking at the card as a whole, it makes me kind of reminisce about the old times of like UFC mid 2010s, 2020s, like in between there where we had like Mark Hunt and all those big heavy hitting fighters. Back then, it was pretty much prime Australian MMA in the UFC. But when you look at the whole list there, it's kind of sad because we didn't really have that many big names. We've got Tuivasa, we've got Volkanovski, we've got Hooker, and then that's pretty much it. Like we've got those three big hitters as stars, and then that's it. But in terms of like quality, it's also pretty sad. The first four fights, as you can see down below, would be the Road to UFC fights. It's a tournament based in Oceania, where where like Asian fighters and Australian fighters can fight and do like a tournament based thingamajiggy. But outside of those four fighters, really we have 10 fights to go, and that's pretty shit for a pay-per-view. I feel like the Sydney crowd's a bit shafted with this one. I mean, I looked at the ticket prices like a week ago, and for like nosebleed it was like $900, and I found that to be pretty stupid. So I'm not expecting a fully sold out crowd. I am not even expecting a memorable event. I'm just hoping that we do have good fights to reminisce about after the event. And judging by those top three fights, I think we're in for a good final few hours of the event. What about you, Dom? What do you think of this card?
Well, the first thing I wanted to ask you about is because despite the fact this card is down under, the start time for me on the West Coast US is just a normal time. It's like 6 or 7 o'clock. So I'm like, what time does it start for you, Josh? Like, what time is the main event? What time does the card kick off?
The prelims, the first fight starts at 9 o'clock in the morning, which I find pretty stupid because like the fighters are going to wake up early, like they're going to like 9 to 5 job, and it's like I can't see. I can't imagine being a fighter in that position, having to wake up at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and having to have to fight 3 hours later, right? It's such a weird time, and I'm guessing it's at the same hours as like a US card, because I mean the UFC is a US based sport, right? It's mostly US fans and all that, so. Yeah, 9 o'clock start and a miserable wake up time for me because I don't like to wake up that early.
Yeah, 9 a.m. is not too bad. I was trying to think what other times it would be in the world. I guess, Will, it must be middle of the night for you then.
Yeah, it's the usual start time. 11 p.m. start of the prelims, main card 3 a.m. So pretty brutal, but it's what I'm used to on a Saturday night.
Yeah, I guess the relevance here for the fights in terms of what it means for the fighters is, I guess if you are a home fighter, it's probably pretty easy to adjust your training schedule so that you're like ready at whatever time it is. I guess for Volkanovski, it's like in the afternoon. It's pretty straightforward. He's usually awake then anyway, and I think it's probably an extra level of or layer of confusion for fighters who've traveled from further away, like America. And I imagine, this is just speculation, having never had to adjust my body clock for a fight, that doing it for the morning is probably a little bit more problematic than for the afternoon, but we'll see. And I think that maybe there's going to be more volatility for away fighters early on. So I'm just looking here, seeing when the first away fighter is. And I think Khan Offley and Yizar are kind of from, well, I know Offley is from Melbourne and Yizar is from China. So I don't think they will be too affected. So really it would be then Oban Elliott's the first overseas fighter traveling a long distance to get to the card. So that will be one to watch then, because that's going to be like 10 a.m, I guess, or no, maybe like 11 a.m. Yeah, in terms of the fights, I think you're right. There's nothing really sensational here. I'm mainly looking forward to the top 3 fights. Those are the 3 that we're breaking down. So, yeah, I think without any further ado, shall I just get straight into the main event, guys?
Absolutely. Let's go for it.
So here we have Alexander the Great Volkanovski in a rematch against the Brazilian Diego Lopes, who resides in Mexico. And the first time these two fought was 9 months ago, and it was in Miami, Florida, and Volkanovski won by unanimous decision. And it was a fight that had a lot of talking points. So we've had a long time to think about this. This fight was announced before the end of the year. I'm sure a lot of you listening have had a lot of time to think about it. And initially, when I had my sort of take on the fight, I thought to myself, well, I was impressed with Diego Lopes in the first fight. And I think that, you know, he's got a good chance in the second fight. And that hasn't changed really, but that was the way I was leaning over the Christmas period. And then today I did my homework and I rewatched Volk Diego in the first fight. And it was a little bit different to how I remembered. So in the first fight, I bet on Volkanovski, quite a large bet on him. So I was pretty nervous. And I think those incidents that happened, so there was a couple of incidents that happened in favor of Diego. They made me really worried, of course, as a bettor. Like, I was extremely nervous, extremely worried. But now rewatching it, of course, in the cold light of day without any money riding on the fight, I could kind of judge it a little bit differently. So round 1 was a Volk round, clearly. He landed the heaviest shots. He got a takedown on Diego. It was clearly 10-9. Round 2 was very similar. So Volk's leading the dance with his jab and his movement. Diego can't really get close to him. The calf kick and the jab of Volk is landing at will. And Diego had his most significant moment of the fight that far, right at the end. You know, the totality of the damage that round was done by Volk, but Diego drops Volk in a kind of strange exchange with like an overhand punch, unconventional punch, and it drops him, but he instantly pops straight back up. He seems fine, but the round ends. So we can't really tell the extent of the damage done, but that was enough to sway 2 of the judges to give that round to Diego. So in my eyes, it was a Volk round, but 2 judges gave it to Diego. Round 3 was back to business as usual. So, you know, rounds 1 through 3, if you watch them, is just Volk dominating Diego, like on the feet. Not much activity inside of the first minute in each of the rounds, but every round progressed very similarly. So usually around 3 minutes, Volk's landing flush. Diego hasn't landed anything by that point. Volk's peppering him with the jab at will, using footwork to stay safe. Daniel Cormier comments, Lopes is a tough man, which pretty much summarizes what's happening here. And then, you know, Diego starts to move forward, realizing he needs to make something happen. But he just can't land. And every time he pushes forward too much into the pocket, either gets cracked by Volkanovski with a left hook, right overhand, or he gets a takedown attempt on him. So at like 1 minute to 1:30 in every single round, that's when the takedown attempt comes. It was part of the game plan. Clearly, the Volk thought, what I'm going to do is I'm going to beat him on the feet, and then as he gets closer to the round, I'm going to take him down. I think that plan was predicated around the fact that he thinks Diego is extremely dangerous on the ground, so he doesn't really want to go on the ground with him. So that was my sort of second-hand reading into this tactic. So 4th round, Diego this is where he starts to really increase the urgency, because he's realized I'm probably down on the scorecards. And I think he pretty much lands his first calf kick in round 4. And I'm like, why weren't you throwing those earlier in the fight? Because it looks like it really hurts. And the calf kicks were a feature of the fight with Topuria. Topuria was landing some nasty calf kicks on Volk, and that was affecting his movement. So I think this time round, he'll be looking to land those from the get-go. I don't know if it was like the moment, the occasion, but Diego was like a little bit like a deer in the headlights in this fight. And yeah, I just think that round 4 was much of the same, but there was an incident that happened halfway through the fight. So there was a straight left by Diego. And if you watch it on the slow motion replay, which we have the benefit of doing in hindsight, it sort of grazes Volkanovski's eyelid. At the same time, he follows up with a very clean uppercut to the chin of Volk. So Volk's kind of like, he is hurt. He didn't get dropped, but he also can't see, because at the end of round 4, he says to the cornerman, he says, "I'm finally getting my eyesight back." So I was like, "What? You're fighting for the rest of round 4 without your eyesight?" So around like halfway through the 4th round, Volk got hurt. Volk couldn't see, and it didn't look good because it looked like Diego started going a bit crazy, chasing him. But rewatching it, not much damage was done. Volk was still landing more than Diego. So for me, the 4th round was a Volk round, because on the totality of damage, he did do the most damage. But the judges, 2 of the judges, gave that round to Diego. 5th round, Volk just separates himself like the dominant champ that he is, shows that he's superior. He's landing the bigger shots. He's jabbing, and Diego's just chasing shadows. And on reflection, and on DC says the jab is money with a minute to go. So on reflection after the whole 5 rounds, it didn't scream to me that Diego has much of a chance here outside of a puncher's chance. In the first fight, Volk landed 3 times as many strikes as Diego over the course of 5 rounds, which is just a bit ludicrous, really. Now, no 2 fights are the same. You hear that said all the time. I do agree. I think this could be a completely different fight, but I'm still expecting Volk to win in any way he wants. In fact, the one thing I spotted in this fight that I think Volk might do, it depends, is if he shoots a takedown earlier, I think he could get dominant top position on Diego and make this look a lot easier, because he got caught on the feet. So he can go 5 rounds. We know he can do that, but he did get caught on the feet. He waited till a minute and a half left of each round to shoot his takedowns, and he only got 1 takedown. That was the first one. I think he needs to shoot a takedown earlier, and even though Diego's very dangerous, that will mix things up, right? So it's a risk. It is a risk, but staying on the feet with Diego is also a risk, because Diego punches very hard. In a nutshell, these are the characteristics that I've summarized here for the 2 fighters. So Volk has more volume than Diego. Over 5 rounds, he lands more. That's for sure in this kind of matchup. He has that kind of fight IQ and ring craft that can only be honed from like years and years of experience of fighting. His movement is incredible. Like the way he was like dodging. The only person who caught him clean really was Topuria. Unfortunately, I rewatched that fight as well. And by the way, Volk was absolutely schooling Topuria. If you look at Topuria's face before he finishes Volk, it's bloody. He's got blood coming from his eyes, from his nose. People forget that, because with an emphatic finish, you did your job. But Volk was showing that he was a level above Topuria in the stand-up, which most people are going to think that's very controversial, but just rewatch the fight. It wasn't really close. It's that jab. The jab was just landing. It's such a good shot of his. His defense is extremely good. He rarely gets hit. Of course, over 5 rounds, you will eventually catch him, and it's the well-roundedness, right? He can grapple, he can strike. The 2 things that make me wary about betting on Volk here, it's his age. He's 37 years old, and it's his chin. We've seen it exposed. He's had a lot of time, though, to recover. So the reason we've seen chin issues in the past was too short amount of time between recovery. When he took the Islam fight, it was 10 days off the couch, and then 5 months later, he fought Topuria. He had over a year to fight Lopes the first time. His chin held up. Now he's got 9 months. On the other side, we know Lopes has immense power. He doesn't seem to ever get wobbled. So the durability is a real asset in this fight, because Volk didn't really seem to. He did wobble Diego in the first fight, but not enough to really put Diego off from walking him down. So we're going to see that forward pressure again, I'm sure. I don't know whether we're going to see the submission threat, because there was no ground exchange pretty much in the first fight. And I think the issues with Diego here, and why I think he's being overrated with the odds at the moment being plus 120 for Diego and something like minus 140 for Volk, is he's extremely hittable. Doesn't move his head at all, so that's great for Volk. He actually doesn't have that much UFC experience. He's 6-3 in the UFC, and his fight IQ, at least in the first fight that I saw, it was appalling. He didn't adjust. He didn't make adjustments. It's just Volk just was able to just implement his game plan for 5 rounds. So I'm not expecting that to happen again. So I know that there's variables here, but I think not enough time has passed that Volk could have declined so much, or that Lopes could have improved so much. So got 2 bets here. I've got bets on either side. Sorry, 3 bets. On the right-hand side, you've got the Lopes finish only prop, or decision no action. So if Lopes gets the finish, that pays out. If it goes to decision, you get your money back. On the left-hand side, I believe the value is on the Volkanovski money line. If that's too far gone, so I think once it approaches -150, it's probably not good value anymore. Then you've got the 4-5 or decision outcome at plus money. I think the most likely outcome here, and I think it's going to be 60% or greater, is Volk winning, and most likely winning by decision. And that's my breakdown. Sorry, I know that was a bit longer than usual, but I spent like a long time today going through this fight. So would love to hear from Will and Josh now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything to add here. I am firstly impressed at how well you broke that down. I felt like I was watching a YouTube video from like Luke Thomas or some big analyst like that. I'm like, holy shit, this is awesome. You have pretty much said all that really needs to be said. Personally, I do think that Lopes has more of a chance to win this one than Volkanovski, because like last episode, I did say that when it comes to rematches, the loser typically has more ways to improve than the winner does, and so Lopes is young. He still has a lot in the game compared to Volkanovski, who maybe isn't near the end of his career, but he has shown signs of like slowing down. So yeah, damn Dom, I got nothing else to add. What about you, Will?
I just want to say I agree with that point, that there's definitely more things for Diego to improve upon than Volk. And my only sort of rebuttal to that is that the gulf on rewatching it was so large. The only issue I could spot with Volk is literally that he got caught a couple of times, and one time we didn't see enough of it. He didn't seem hurt, and the second time there was the kind of luck aspect that his eyelid got cut, which obviously is very unfortunate. But outside of those two moments, it was literally one-way traffic. So yes, I agree, Lopes can improve, but for me, it seems like he has a lot to improve upon. Basically, yeah. Go ahead, Will.
Yeah, well, firstly, I mean, yeah, very impressed. That is some detailed breakdown, and I think you've also like absolutely nailed it. It's a tricky one in that there are a few moving parts, but there were more moving parts last time. So I think that like just from zooming out, people should have a little bit more confidence in Volkanovski this time around, because I just can't get over how dangerous a move it was for him to take that Lopes fight in the first place. I bet Lopes there for that reason alone. Like, I think it was within the span of about 5 months that he got knocked out by both Makhachev and Topuria. And then I think it was like 2 or 3 months after the second KO that he came back to face Lopes. There's no way his durability and his chin had like made a full recovery. So I was thinking that Lopes, who was, pound for pound, one of the most dangerous guys on the roster, could have put away a slightly injured or wounded Volkanovski, and he didn't. I had my major issues with the way that Lopes approached the fight, but I'm not too sure if that's the limitations of it being 5 rounds, or he got caught up in the moment with the narrative I just explained about the vulnerability. Yeah, so it's like I say, that there's lots of intangibles here, because a lot of it comes down to the game planning and adjustments that Lopes makes, and that's the way it goes in rematches, and that's why rematches are so unpredictable. And in MMA specifically, there's that running theme of they never go the same way twice. That's not. Does anyone got any stats on that? By the way, everyone always says that, but I don't know if that's true, because I think logically that shouldn't be the case. But MMA is a weird thing. But yeah, so it's an interesting one. I looked at a couple of Lopes interviews. I looked at his circumstances of what he's doing at the moment, just to kind of see if there was a kind of acknowledgement that he approached it the wrong way. And he did mention that he thought he had too much of an ego going into that fight against Volkanovski, and that he really backed himself to be able to find that KO. And I think that that's a very frustrating thing that you see in MMA. A lot of the times when you see a matchup where a guy should KO the other one, when it doesn't pan out is when they also believe that too, and they go out there and they throw the power strike. It's like if you when you play those guys on UFC 5 and they're not very good, and all they throw is the like big spinning wheel kicks and shit. It's like that. It's like you have to use a jab, you have to set up your strikes or your takedowns, whatever your like bread and butter is. You have to invest in the basics to be able to give your opponent something to think about, because if all you're going to do is throw a big right hand, they're just going to circle out, and they can do that all day anyway. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how Diego Lopes approaches this one, because whilst Volkanovski's had time to recover this time around, which definitely favors him, Lopes has also had more time to analyze how Volkanovski prepared and handled him the first time. And like you said at the end there, Dom, evolutionary wise, Lopes has got room to work, whereas Volkanovski needs to replicate the performance of last time. I'm not too sure what Volkanovski has to bring in, or what new thing he would have brought to the table at camp to make sure he gets the better of Diego the second time. So there being adjustables on Diego's side definitely favors him. The age is also impossible to say. People get very hung up on age in MMA, but I think it's becoming less and less of a factor since USADA is no longer around. Not saying Volkanovski's doing anything, but like it's just very interesting. Like a year, what's a year? What's a year of no fighting? No one knows, like you'd have to do some serious tests on Volkanovski to figure out how regressed he is. We're only just going to have to find out. So yeah, I mean, all in all, it kind of comes down to trust. It comes down to what you latch onto in all of these narratives that are, mostly intangibles. But I think at the end of the day, the proof's in the pudding, and the tape doesn't lie. And Diego Lopes, whilst he had his moments of fight ending and threatening to finish, he was mostly outclassed, I would say, by the better, superior minute winner, which was Volkanovski. So siding with Volkanovski absolutely makes sense. I think he should be the favorite. I think there is an argument that he puts on a performance that's even more dominant here, or he just shuts him out again, and maybe he should be a bigger favorite. I'm not too sure. I wouldn't really want to hang my hat on a money line here, but I do appreciate that Volkanovski should definitely be the favorite.
Yeah, thank you guys. Great points, and you have to see what happens. So, yeah, let's move on to the co-main.
All right. Well, after being slightly on the fence in that last one, I'm going to continue to do the exact same thing here. So, as some of you may know, I do my research for these cards as early in advance as I can. And obviously, we've had a long break over the Christmas New Year period. So I looked into this one in quite a lot of detail quite early on. And it wasn't long ago that we saw Dan Hooker. He fought Arman Sarukian relatively recently. I think it was November or one of the December cards that he main evented that Apex event. So definitely not a lot of time in between bouts for Dan Hooker. Obviously, the nature of that fight was takedowns and ground and pound and a submission. So nothing like damage related or anything to worry about there. But I remember he got booked for this fight against BSD literally within a month of losing to Sarukian, and that immediately was a big red flag for me, because obviously Hooker's a bit older now. He's a finished prospect, so he's a finished product in terms of what he's going to be offering in terms of skill sets. So I don't think there's any evolution to be had for him necessarily, but it just isn't a good look for me for somebody to get schooled in one area and then go, yeah, I'll just fight somebody else who has the exact same path to victory. It just doesn't show any ability to want to improve, get better, or work on and ironing out those creases. So that's immediately a big red flag for me, and I just didn't like to see that at all, because it seems like somebody maybe showing up for a paycheck. Hooker's also been doing interviews in the last couple of weeks talking about what he would have done if he wasn't a fighter and what his post-fight life is going to look like. Absolutely screams of retirement. I know the guy is a brawler and absolutely loves the game and the hustle of being in a cage fight. So that's, all power to him. That's great. The guy's like BMF kind of caliber. But, at the end of the day, when we're talking about betting, we're talking about needing to trust people with our money. And those are not statements of somebody that you would trust with your money. Speaking of which, in that Sarukian fight, I actually bet on the fight to go over 2.5 rounds because I believed in Dan Hooker's ability to make things difficult for a grappler. And the number one reason for that was his fight before last, which was against Mateusz Gamrot, who, again, absolute grappling machine, all about that pushing against the fence, trying to secure that double leg and getting takedowns, etc., etc. And Hooker won a split decision there. It was a very tricky fight where he had to fight hard to get a guy off him for ages, which he did successfully. But he stopped Gamrot from doing anything damaging or fight ending, and he really limited Gamrot's top control time, despite, I think, suffering 5 takedowns from 15 attempts or something like that. So two very different performances from Dan Hooker there. One where he was really up for the fight and another where he wasn't. And the difference to me was the top control ability and how commanding the person was on the mat. So Gamrot doesn't have good top control. He never really has done. He's very much a sort of like rinse and repeat the takedowns. That's his form of dominance. Whereas somebody like Sarukian or Islam Makhachev, who's also finished Dan Hooker on the mat, simply a case of once I get you down, I'm setting up shop. You're here for the rest of the round, and I'm going to do work. So which one is BSD? Is he somebody who has the top control to set up shop and make things work for himself, or is somebody who needs multiple of them? So I went back and did a deep dive on all of BSD's like top control time that he's had in the UFC. And I can comfortably say that I think Benoit Saint-Denis may have some of the worst top control from a high-level grappler I've ever seen in my life. Which maybe is a bit of a sensational statement, but like, hear me out here. So going back to the Mauricio Ruffy fight, he got multiple dominant positions. I think he got mount and he got a back take. And he either got reversed or there was a stand-up in both of those instances before the round ended. I don't have like a strong grappling background myself, but like I personally think it's pretty criminal for you to have both hooks in with back control and for the fighter to get back to their feet. Like it's not an easy position to get out of. A lot of the time it ends in a rear naked choke. So for it to end with them both standing is pretty egregious. But in that fight, Benoit Saint-Denis managed to actually like win the cardio war in that regard and just like pour it on in the second round. And suddenly those instances of him being very aggressive and very submission over position, which he absolutely is, came to the forefront and he was able to overwhelm Ruffy. Next up, I looked at the Kyle Prepelec fight. There was a moment where he had both hooks in, a semi-locked in rear naked choke, and still Kyle Prepelec managed to get back to his feet and they continued the fight standing at distance. This happened twice in the first round. Again, like, you know, what I just said, it's quite crazy that happens. But for me to now have identified 3 instances where this happens, it's just a bit eye-opening to me. But again, Benoit Saint-Denis managed to overwhelm him in round 2. He got his takedowns in round 2, and suddenly there was a little bit less spirit from Prepelec in terms of fighting hard to create the space to get those get-ups in the same way that it happened with Mauricio Ruffy. Next, we had the Dustin Poirier fight. This one was a bit different in that Poirier actually was the one initiating the grappling in that he kept jumping for the guillotine, didn't he? Which was quite funny to watch in hindsight. A good little meme in the MMA world. During that fight, Benoit Saint-Denis attempted an armbar, which is, you know, kind of a tricky move to consolidate position with, because it's almost like pulling guard in a sense. You have to sort of flop to your back, don't you, to pull off an armbar. He lost top control there, which was, you know, a red flag. Hooker allowed Poirier to turn the tide, have a bit of top control time himself, and then maybe stand up. I can't quite remember. And then Benoit Saint-Denis also got Poirier's back in round 2, which he fumbled again. So you can see the pattern that I'm going for here. I basically don't think Benoit Saint-Denis is any good when it comes to grappling somebody from back control. And the only other fight to talk about was the Thiago Moises fight. He struggled to keep top control time and maintain it against Moises because Moises has a very active ground game. It's a very high-level BJJ practitioner. So no hate there, really, to be honest. I think that's a tricky one. There were lots of leg locks being rolled for, which it's always hard to kind of set up shop on somebody who's being so active. But again, Benoit Saint-Denis managed to overwhelm him in round 2, got the takedowns the second time. Things got a bit easier. He set up shop and he went for it. So in summary, there's a whole lot of information I've just dumped on you there. I think that whether or not this is an easy fight for Benoit Saint-Denis entirely depends on Dan Hooker and how much enthusiasm he has. Because in round 1, I don't think Saint-Denis is going to dominate. I think that he's going to land a couple of takedowns. They'll get back to the feet. Saint-Denis will maybe find himself in some, dangerous positions. But I do still think that Dan Hooker has enough to, wriggle his way out of them or keep himself safe, whether it ends up being one of those things where he gets stuck in like half guard or something. It doesn't necessarily scream minus 300. He's going to submit him really early, but it all depends on whether or not Dan Hooker has the motivation to keep going that way, because when you're a striker, you lose the round one and you're like, okay, cool, go back to the stall. You get the opportunity to start again from standing in round two. You know, this is your moment. If you get taken down then quite early on in round two, I imagine there is a huge shift in morale and you get deflated and you're like, fuck, if I can't get back to my feet really quickly, I'm going to be 2 rounds down and I'm going to be in round 3 when I'm probably more tired, don't have as much sting in my punches. I've probably lost this fight. I imagine it happens quite a lot where a lot of strikers in striker versus grappler matches break in round 2 because they realize that their chances of winning have just halved because they've been taken down again. I know that as a bettor who's bet on that situation, I felt that way, where like you just feel deflated when you see your guy get taken down. And I can just see that happening for Dan Hooker. And I think it happens for a lot of guys. I spoke about a trend of Saint-Denis turning the tide in round 2 against guys, except Poirier, the only instance of the difference there. So, yeah, I think that basically what we're looking at here is a fight where Dan Hooker has the potential to turn this one into a tricky fight like Dustin Poirier did, but only if he wants it. And everything I said at the start about the circumstance of Dan Hooker taking this fight really quickly after the last one, the flirting with thinking about a fight, a life where he isn't fighting, it just doesn't scream like enthusiasm. So it's tricky because, you know, Hooker is also like a dog. He's also that guy who is up for a scrap and is really up for it in the moment. But I just can't call whether or not I trust him. And that's the key thing here. So in terms of like looking at it from a betting perspective, I'm really keen on the fight doesn't go the distance. Like minus 225 is a pretty solid number. But I think that if Hooker really is up for it, he has the opportunity to gas out BSD, because if he's still there second half of the fight, BSD gets sloppy. And if he has those moments on the feet, I can see him doing exactly what Dustin Poirier did. It's absolutely likely if he finds himself in that situation. But on the flip side, if that like round 2 deflation happens that I spoke about, I think BSD probably turns it up and finds another submission on Hooker. So I guess also if if this parlay leg I'm offering you is not really your kind of thing, taking a stab on BSD in round 2, I think also is a narrative that could really play out here. I think there's a really high likelihood that Dan Hooker just quits in the second round after a semi-spirited first. So I've not written that down there because I've kind of thought about it on the fly. But yeah, round 2 BSD would be my unofficial prediction for this one, having looked into it a bit more. So I guess now I'll open up the floor after talking for ages. Does anybody have anything to say off the back of that? Any agreements or disagreements?
Every time you mention BSD and his grappling, how bad it is, I always laugh because it reminds me of Daniel Cormier and Islam Makhachev having a chat about like Chandler's grappling and Poirier's grappling, and Islam's like, who give him belt, you know? And so I'm fucking imagining Will saying that as well now. So that's caught me off guard. But essentially the way that I believe this fight's gonna go is Hooker via KO or BSD via submission. I mean, I know that's very bland to kind of talk about, but like I can't really see this fight going to the distance. I can't see this fight going any other way other than Hooker putting BSD to sleep via knockout or BSD using his grappling to submit Hooker. I kind of want to disagree with Will's like assessment about BSD's grappling. I mean, I know that what he said is fairly true, but I am a fan, so maybe I'm blind here, but I believe that BSD's grappling isn't only about his positional holding, but it's about the volume of positional advancements that he makes. So typically when BSD grapples, and maybe Will can back me up here, or maybe Will can dispute me here, I'm happy for both. But when he grapples, it's always about getting that mount position. It's never about getting that half guard first and then climbing to mount. It's always quickly getting to that mount position. And no matter what posture he has, he kind of just stays in that position. I feel like he can probably pull it off against Hooker if Hooker and his cardio does wear out, and that's where Will said, you know, the second round finished by BSD, or you know, the second round being the momentum shift for BSD. You know, I believe we're going to see that as well. I think we're going to see how dangerous BSD can be in those last 2 rounds. And I mean, I don't think it's gonna go to the third round. If it does, I'll be shocked. But I do think that the first round is going to be mostly Hooker beating BSD up on the feet. I mean, I know that BSD is fairly tenacious on the feet, but Hooker can't get knocked out. I mean, the only thing that can knock out Hooker is an anesthesiologist, right? Just put him to sleep by general anesthesia, you know, all that shit. I think that we're going to see a very fun first round, but then once Hooker blows out his arms and like steps his own cardio from the output, BSD is going to take over. And yeah, that's my All right, Dom, Will, Will, do you want to rebut on that thing I said, or not really, or what's up?
No, I definitely hear you. I think something I've definitely been guilty of here that I should have said at the start. When you look at the betting line here, which has Benoit Denis as -350 and Hooker at like +280, I obviously look at this like starting out from the money line perspective and looking at the dog and looking at like, can they cause the upset here? So I haven't really sort of, actually given BSD any credit for or even analyzed his striking, but haven't given credit for the good stuff that he does do. So yeah, you are right. He is a very aggressive submission over position kind of guy, but he will also show that in his positional grappling, and that he does like to be a hot knife through butter, as they say. So, if that works out well for him, then of course it will do. But I think that it definitely, we can agree, it definitely gives opportunities for his opponent to find the escape if they need to. He's basically all like 0 to 100 kind of grappler. So yeah, I still think that Hooker should know that if he's done any preparation here, and I think that if he has a bit of patience and a little bit of like opportunistic decision making, he can find those moments. But yeah, he could also get completely like blitzed through. I don't know. I definitely think early on I do give Hooker credit, despite the fact maybe I shouldn't. So yeah, I definitely do mean to say that I respect BSD's like grappling from like an aggressive point of view, but when it's bad, it looks awful, if that makes sense. Hence why I've been so scathing. Anyway, yeah, let's move on. Dom, what do you think about this fight? Yeah, tell us what you think.
I think Hooker's going to win this fight. That's what I think. Yeah, and I also am not a big fan of BSD. I think he's had some great performances. I don't want to take anything away from him. He is a great fighter. Benoit Denis began kickboxing and doing BJJ in 2017. So it's a while ago. It's 9 years ago, but it's also not that long ago. That's when he started, remember? So, and he never like reached the upper echelons of any BJJ or any grappling outside of France. And for me, I mean, in addition to all the stuff Will said, I think the striking, the lack of sort of certainty in his striking in the Ruffy one really came across as quite strange. I don't know if it was the pressure of being on French soil, maybe that was it, but he just looked very uncomfortable in the striking. And I think it was just, to be honest, I think Ruffy was just not up to the task, basically, and that's why Ruffy lost. I think if Hooker keeps this standing, we're going to see something like the Zaleski kind of performance, where I think BSD is going to take a lot of punishment on the feet. And you said something about like, well, what is Hooker's motivation now that he's clearly not going to get the title? Well, he did have an interview where he said, I'm just going to hang around as long as possible and ruin as many people's hopes and dreams as I can. If I can't have nice things, no one can, which I just thought was a pretty badass and awesome thing to say. So he has got motivation here. I think he's looking at BSD and be like, this guy thinks he's great, and I'm going to show the world that he's not. And Hooker in Australia tends to do that, to be honest. He's 5-1 in Australia. He's had many an upset there. He beat Gamrot there, of course. He got a win over Jalen Turner as well. And I just don't think BSD's grappling is very good. He's definitely not on the level of Arman Sarukian. Hooker's been in there with great grapplers. He's been submitted by great grapplers. So yeah, I do think that the submission's always going to be live, because if BSD finds the right position, yeah, I mean, anything can happen. I mean, Hooker can submit BSD as well, right? I think one of the interesting things which I saw people were dismissing was the Moicano performance, saying, oh, that's like a 1 in 100 that Moicano is going to top mount him and batter him. Yeah, but it still happened, and it didn't look good. He had no answer once he was in that position. And I know you can't get out once you're in that position, but I mean, you know, it wasn't a good look. I think that if you look at the run that Benoit and Denis been on, he's been promoted through the ranks very quickly, and he hasn't really beaten anyone amazing. I mean, outside of Benny Dariush, I think Benny Dariush is amazing, but that fight lasted 16 seconds. I was going to say 30 seconds. It lasted 16 seconds. Literally, it's not useful as evidence because it didn't last long enough. So yeah, I mean, fighting Kyle Prepolak on over short notice. He's lost to Moicano and Poirier. The fighters he's beaten, Frevola, Moises, Ismail Bonfim, Gabriel Miranda, and Nicholas Stolze. Look, none of them are terrible, but none of them are actually that good. So I think Hooker's going to provide a stiff test. And obviously I'm having this impassioned speech from the position of Hooker being plus 300. So of course, if Hooker was even money with BSD, I'm not going to sit here saying he's going to win. But at plus 300, I had to have a stab. So yeah, I think Hooker's going to win. And yeah, it was great to hear Will's analysis. I do recall all of that, those things happening with the losing top position, BSC losing top position, but certainly really helped to have sort of Will bring it to life and go through all those incidences where he's lacked control, which doesn't surprise me. I don't think he's going to get control over Hooker, and I think this is going to be like a very fan-friendly 3-round war in which BSD stands no chance because you know Hooker's built for war. Yes, BSD can have a war, but if you see him in a war, it's generally not a good thing. He's usually taking a lot of punishment and accumulation of damage. So I think BSD has to take this down and sub Hooker, like you said, in round 2, or I think he's going to lose. That's it. And yeah, nothing else to say there. Then I'll move on to the final fight, which Josh is going to break down for us.
Yeah, I mean, when I looked at the card as a whole, this one really stood out to me because I'm a striking fanatic. I love a good striking bout. Unfortunately, for probably everyone here, I am fairly ill prepared here. We are recording a day early because of my request. I'm busy tomorrow, so all that stuff. But anyway, excuses aside, because that's pretty sad. I'm going to break it down fighter by fighter, so bear with me here. So Fiziev, he is more of a traditional kickboxer. He coaches at Tiger Muay Thai. He has spent his entire career in that realm of kickboxing, right? And it shows when he fights. He is extremely technical. He can pretty much fight against anyone on the roster toe-to-toe. I mean, to go how many rounds? 6 rounds against Gaethje, like, you know, 2 full fights. That's insane. Not many people can withstand that much punishment, and not many people can make Gaethje look that not bad, but that much in trouble, because we rarely see Gaethje in moments where he absorbs damage, right? Typically, Gaethje is the one dealing damage, but in Fiziev's case, it was a very closely fought fight those 2 times. Everything that Fiziev throws typically comes with power, and I do think that whilst power is still on the side of Ruffy here, Fiziev can perhaps use his smaller stature to get into that range of landing his overhand right or whatever power shot he has in his arsenal. Now, speaking of this smaller stature, I do think that Fiziev probably looks a bit bad on paper. I mean, for casuals, they might look at the height and reach and go, well, obviously he's going to be a midget compared to Ruffy. But like, when you watch Fiziev fight, he is a small target. He always moves, he always bobs, he always weaves. You know, he is a hard to track target unless you kind of corner him against the fence. But even then, his footwork is still there. His hands are always raised. His guard is intelligent. Everything about him is pretty much defensive oriented, and that's what I believe is going to lead to him winning this fight. Because whilst Ruffy is known for his power, for his fantastic spinning wheel kicks that he used against King Green and all that stuff, I don't think that Ruffy stands much of a chance toe-to-toe unless he can land that knockout punch. Now, speaking of Ruffy, or Ruffy, I don't know. If he is evasive enough, he could use his footwork to lure Fiziev into a counter, or he could use his jumping knees to pretty much deal damage against Fiziev. And since he is the taller fighter, those jumping knees are going to be pretty effective. I mean, we saw BSD fight Ruffy a while ago, and those jumping knees caught BSD on the train a few times. Probably knocked him not out, but like one time he looked visibly rocked and kind of just leaned on Ruffy. The only downside I see here about Ruffy, and I'm going to be fairly repetitious about Ruffy for his whole career, maybe for another few fights anyway, at least, is that his record is pretty bland. He has only 4 fights at this moment against UFC fighters, and this is his 5th fight. And I see him more as a, well, he's good at fighting nodes tag on him, so he's obviously a good fighter, kind of fighter, right? He's more of a named fighter than a high level fighter. I mean, like a win against King Green is, it's fine if King Green fought maybe 8 years ago, so it doesn't really have much weight now. But basically, the way that I see this fight going is, Ruffy obviously has to get the KO to win, but then Fiziev's defenses and in his own movements and whatever, his own technical prowess is going to make that fairly difficult. And I believe that at the end of the day, Fiziev is going to be the victor. I think Fiziev is the underdog still, like 2.0 dog or whatever. But I have a couple of bets here. I normally don't really think of betting too much. I mean, I'm more of a yapper and, you know, not much of a capper. But first of all, as you can see here, Fiziev most significant strikes. I don't know if that's a prop available yet, but it might be. But that pretty much goes by how I believe the fight will happen, right? Fiziev uses his volume a lot. He is always quick. And Ruffy is someone who uses long singular shots to his opponent, to knock out his opponent. He's not one to use volume. So visually, at least to the stat keeper or whatever they call them, I think on the numbers, Fiziev is going to be the busier fighter. He is going to be the one pressuring forward. He is going to be the one wanting to create chaos in the fight in order to land shots, really, because the more shots coming Ruffy's way means the less of a chance Ruffy has to retaliate. So he's going to keep Ruffy busy by just being the busier fighter. Over 2.5 rounds is a fairly non-explanatory bet, because I do think that I didn't see a finish. If Gaethje couldn't finish Fiziev, then I can't see fucking Ruffy do it, right? It's probably shit math right there, but like that's just my tunnel vision being, you know, its own thing. And the last bet there, as you can see, is Fiziev takedown +1, or, well, he gets the takedown. When BSD fought Ruffy, BSD only found success on the feet because of those takedown threats. If Fiziev replicates that takedown threat, and I mean, we have seen Fiziev get takedowns before. He got takedowns against Bahamondes and a few other opponents. But if he can make Ruffy defend on 2 fronts, so raised guard or lowered guard for the down block, I do think that eventually Fiziev is going to use that threat of a takedown to just make his strikes more effective. I don't know if he's going to get the takedown, but eventually, if you cast a wide enough net, you're going to catch something, right? So I do think that eventually Fiziev is going to get Ruffy down, and it's a path of least resistance, right? And Fiziev isn't a rookie; he knows how to fight. So, yeah. As I said before, it's a very short and brief kind of breakdown. I have notes here, but they are hastily written. So, does anyone want to take the floor now? Anyone got anything to say?
Okay, well.
Yeah, it's a tricky one for me. Like I know personally, when it comes to striker versus striker affairs, it's not my preferred fight to focus on. So that's, yeah, I haven't really sort of like gone too in depth in this one. But I think the one key angle for me personally that like does differentiate between these two, aside from the overall experience of Fiziev and him just seeming to be a higher caliber, more clean and polished striker, is that Fiziev's got a weird cardio, and I don't think I trust it. He has had like some sort of not sketchy round threes, but I think I don't actually have the numbers in front of me, I don't think. But if you were to look back at the scorecards in all of his fights that have gone the distance, his round three is one that he surrenders quite often. And I always feel like on principle, when you have a fighter that consistently loses, either they fade late or they are a slow starter, I think it's quite tricky if you don't trust them for a finish, which I don't really think Fiziev finishes Ruffy here. It concerns me in that, if he does fall off a cliff in round three and he's expected to lose that, you therefore need a perfect fight for him where he has to win rounds 1 and 2, or a judge is therefore going to say he didn't win. That it's not impossible, and if he is better than Ruffy, he can probably easily win rounds 1 and 2 before he falls apart. But it's not like a cardio death to the point where I would worry about him gassing out and getting finished. But I just think that he just takes it off, really. He invests early and then just sort of fades or declines slightly. So I think that's probably the one thing that made me hesitant to really go in on Fiziev's superiority, or expected superiority, from like a minute winning and like more clean technique perspective. But yeah, I understand this fight being lined quite close for that reason alone, but I personally would have Fiziev as the favorite here, not Ruffy. So yeah, I anything could happen in this one. I'm excited to watch it, but I don't have any confidence in anything at all. So that is really me grasping at straws. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be fun either way, isn't it? So I'm excited to watch it. Anything to add, Dom? What have you got for this one?
Yeah, so I think I've got some interesting things to add. That's some desk research to put out there, which is that here, Ruffy is the home fighter. So he moved to Australia. He lives in Australia. He's training with Alex Volkanovski for this fight. So he's going to be very well adjusted to the climate. So Fiziev is the away fighter. And Ruffy moved out there because he had a tough 2025, and he hasn't left the fighting nerds. He says he's going to come back, but obviously he has physically left them. So I think he didn't want to cause too much consternation amongst their camp. So he's not officially left or anything, but he wants to broaden his horizons and get more experience. I think that's a great thing for a young fighter to do, is to go and train with one of the greatest fighters ever. So he's training with Volkanovski. That's a great thing. I've got to be honest, I haven't stylistically looked into it too much. I haven't watched too many of their fights. I definitely think when the fight was announced, I thought Fiziev should be a slight favorite just based on his UFC experience. He's got a tremendous number of fights. I mean, Ruffy's had 5 UFC fights, which is nothing, and Fiziev's had at least twice as many. Yeah, he's had like 11, I think. Another interesting thing about this fight is I was looking back through Rafa Fiziev's tweets. So he originally tore his ACL and his MCL. He tweeted out in 2019. Unfortunately, I've a complete ACL MCL tear. I'll undergo surgery today. Praying for quick recovery and return to the octagon. I don't even know which fight that was before. So that's who he fought in 2019. So that would have been, that would have been very early in his career. He basically would have just started. He fought Mark Diakese in 2020. And then, so subsequent to his initial knee injury and surgery, recovered, he got back in the UFC, and then he had a fight against none other than Mateusz Gamrot in 2023, and he blew out his knee again and required another ACL surgery, a second one. And then he was due to fight against Charles Oliveira in September, which is obviously very beneficial for I think Will, you bet on Oliveira against the replacement, none other than Gamrot again. And Gamrot's involved in this storyline throughout. Fiziev pulled out of the fight due to another knee complication, and again he elaborated on it. And this time he said that it didn't require surgery. It doesn't require immediate surgery, but it was enough to for him. The injury was enough to. It was a tear. Sorry, no. It was a knee injury. It wasn't enough for him to require surgery, but it was enough for him to pull out of the fight with Charles Oliveira. So that was in September 2025. Fast forward, we're in January. I don't know. He might be fine. And I assume if you're going to get in a cage with Mauricio Ruffy, you feel completely fine. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. But those intangibles definitely worry me from the Fiziev side of things. The injuries and the long travel, and the fact this is going to be in the morning or something, or early afternoon. Ruffy is very motivated. He's young. I think this is going to be a fantastic fight. It could be a close fight. Oh, the other thing that wasn't mentioned, sorry, the final intangible I want to mention was the reach advantage. So there's a reach advantage and a height advantage for Ruffy. But it would be remiss of me not to mention that I always say this about Ruffy. He's not in this weight class. He's a 170 pounder. So Fiziev has hopefully fixed his cardio with the ways you described, Will, the black magic that's available now. And Ruffy, I don't know if he can fix his cardio. I think he's going to gas in round 3 for sure. I honestly think Ruffy needs to get damage early on Fiziev, which won't be easy, as Josh mentioned, because he's very, very dynamic, very quick, very good movement. So yeah, I think it's 50-50 fight. Like, I took Ruffy at plus money, so I'm happy with that, to be honest. I think any plus money you're getting this, I think it's a close fight. And the reason I think it's 50-50 because I think it's balanced out by some of these intangibles that are weighing Fiziev down. If I knew I was getting a prime Fiziev here, and not in Australia as well, where Ruffy is training, then maybe I would, think that the Fiziev would be worth betting on. But at plus money, which he's not anymore, Ruffy was the bet for me. And with that, let's take a look at our bets.
Oh boy, I have a lot of bets here. Like I said, did all my work over the Christmas period for this one, so I had a lot of moneyline investment quite early on. I think I probably got bored of not having UFC fights, so went into it a bit too much. So from the top, I didn't really mention it in the breakdown that Dom did for the main event, but Diego Lopes decision, no bet. I don't understand why that was available for me at -125. I think that if you know for sure that there's going to be a finish here, it's very, very likely to be on the Diego Lopes side. He's a very durable man. Volkanovski's not a very dangerous finisher. I would be surprised if Volkanovski finished him. It's definitely not what's expected of Volkanovski if he is going to win. So the most likely outcome is obviously a Volkanovski decision. If that happens, I get my money back. And the second most likely one is a Lopes finish. And if that happens, I win money. So I think -125 was a really nice spot for that. So I was very happy with that one. That's my biggest bet on the card at 1.5 units. Next up, it's paid a lot of chalk here. I bet the fight doesn't go the distance for Hooker BSD, as I just talked about, parlayed with Quillan Salkilled. I think he's going to absolutely destroy Jamie Malarkey. I got him at like -800, which is a cardinal sin to some people, but I genuinely think that that's like about right, if not slightly value for a tiny amount of percentage. So I bet that for 1.25 units at -175. Next up is a very controversial one. If you're a regular listener, you may remember my breakdown of Derek Lewis versus Talson Teixeira. I do not understand why everyone thinks Teixeira is a good fighter that deserves to be fighting top 15 opposition. Like, what's the guy done? He's beaten Justin Taffer. Congratulations. It doesn't. Yeah, okay. He went up against Derek Lewis, and everyone talks about him being a grappler, but he got KO'd in like a minute and a half or something. Didn't look to shoot a takedown there. I know you got to set them up, but like, whoops, nice one. And he goes up against Tuivasa here. Yeah, Tuivasa's like not somebody you can trust, and yes, he's on like a 4-5 fight losing streak, which is absolutely egregious. But like, he can still bang, and if they get the opportunity to throw punches at each other for 2 minutes, Tuivasa has a real shot at doing it. And I don't understand what people see in Teixeira to believe that he's above that, because I don't think he is. So I've bet a combination of the KO and the KO round 1 for half a unit. It's not that much. It's basically like a show me situation. I don't understand the hype on Teixeira. Next up, Billy Elikana. I moved quickly on this one. Got him -175 on the money line. I think that you can't talk about an Aussie card without mentioning the surname Taffer, and Junior Taffer is also on this card. Those guys are not good grapplers, and Elikana is a much more well-rounded fighter, and also the bigger guy slightly. I think he can be patient and find a way to mix in his takedowns and just use Taffer as a mop to clean the octagon, because Taffer is not good at defending any wrestling. Torres Finney, this one, if you caught the early leans breakdown, very complicated fight in that there's lots of conversations about Jacob Malkoun and his health. He took 2 years off, two-year hiatus for him. 1 year was due to him having issues with his spine or his back. He had surgery. It just sounds like his body is in a bad way. I don't really understand why he's still fighting, to be honest. It sounds like almost retirement level injury. And the public have noted that, and a lot of money's been coming in on Finney. I got in on it at plus 137, kind of maybe looking to arb out of this one. I don't really want money on Torres Finney because he's dog shit as a fighter. So probably won't actually be a bet come fight day because I don't really want money on him. But here we are. Might be trying to like play either side and get some like solidified profit there. Cam Ralston, another chalky favorite. I think a justified money line. Don't understand why he's not like minus 400 here. I think he's gonna put a real beating on Cody Brundage. I think Brundage is an awful fighter who his best path to victory is by weaseling, which is terrifying. But like if that's the most credit you can receive for your skill set, you're not a very good fighter. I think that again, it was just a case of me seeing minus 250, thinking there was a little bit of value there, and I think Ralston's now like minus 350, so I think it's a justified reason for playing it. And finally, Jonathan Mikhalev, 1.25 units there at minus 125. I think that Oban Elliott is an overrated fighter who benefited from some good stylistic performances. He has very good takedown defense against traditional single and double legs. That's pretty much all he does. Having faced Preston Parsons and Basil Hafez, it put him in a position to do exactly that, and he did it well. Good for him. Jonathan Mikhalev is not somebody who goes hard for double and single legs. He can use judo trip throws, which is what Ko used to beat Oban Elliott. He also looks like the slightly better striker and also the much more dangerous grappler. So I think he has more paths to victory. I don't think he should be minus 125. So I bet that. Also, I haven't written it down on the slate here, but since going through the breakdown, I've decided I am probably going to look at that round 2 angle in Hooker versus BSD. I probably will play fight to end in round 2 at plus 300 for like a quarter of a unit. Maybe play BSD submission in round 2 for like a tenth of a unit. I think that's at like plus 650. Basically just like trying to hit some bigger price props here because I have got quite a chalky slate. I'm aware of that. So I'm going to try and like balance it out with a few long shots. Yeah, a lot of bets there, but hopefully I end up in profit to get the year off to a decent start. Dom, how about you? What have you got?
Yeah, we have some similarities. We've talked about Ruffy already, so I've got 2 units on Ruffy plus money. He's no longer plus money. I think he's actually like minus 130 now. So yeah, the line movement seems to very much like Ruffy, Australian Ruffy against the long distance traveller that is going to be Fiziev. Mikhalev I like as for the reasons you mentioned against Oban Elliott. I think also I took this because I knew that in the previous matchup that they had, so it was rescheduled, it was cancelled. I think that Mikhalev money came in until he was like minus 140, minus 150, so I jumped on it early. I think that it's bouncing around though, so I think money's coming in on Oban Elliott, so you can still get good odds on Mikhalev. It probably is going to be a close fight, to be honest. It probably is going to go to the judges, so I'm hoping that home advantage comes good, the motivation in front of the home fans for Mikhalev coming on in the morning in the prelims. He'll be well adjusted to the time zone. Like you said, he's pretty well rounded. He's not like super slick on the feet. He is super slick on the map, but he needs to get it there. So yeah, I'm interested to see that fight. I'm excited for it. Malkoun, I didn't know about all his back issues and stuff before I put a unit on him. I was just like, why are the odds like this? This is crazy. Like Torres Finney shouldn't be even money with, or close to even money, even with Malkoun, because all the fights that Finney's had in the UFC have been absolute snooze fests. So if he does that here, if he does a snooze fest, he's going to lose because the judge is not going to give it to him. No way. The crowd is going to be absolutely raucous for Malkoun. So if Finney just holds him down for 3 rounds, the decision is going to go to Malkoun even if he lands 1 punch around. But I'm interested to see what kind of tactics Malkoun will employ. If he's hurt his back, maybe he just wants to keep it standing. I saw some analysis saying he's going to go for the single leg. I mean, that would even look comical, wouldn't it? Like Malkoun going with single leg on Finney. I think that just like shows that some people. Oh, we'll see what happens. I will say some people don't know what they're talking about, but let's see if Malkoun shoots a single leg on Finney, shall we? I think his best bet is to keep this fight standing, pep him with the jab, and just show that there's levels on the feet. Lopes, decision no action, the same one that you've got, Will. I took this over the Christmas period. Like we had a long time to think about it. I really thought Lopes would decide, but I didn't think there was a lot of value in the plus 140 money line. So I thought this was a good way to go. But it kind of protects me anyway from my eventual investment in Volkanovski. So I've taken Volkanovski. I could just take it by decision, but I always worry in 5-round fights. Anyone who follows the way I bet, I always worry about cumulative damage. Now, a finish in round 4 and 5 is always quite unlikely, but the way Volkanovski fights with volume and peppering with the jab and the accumulation of damage, that just worries me. And I'd rather just have the protection, because Volkanovski to win by decision is something like plus 150 or plus 160. Why not just take the 4 and 5? It's a brilliant way to cover yourself. So if he does finish it late, then yeah, that will hit as well as the decision. And the money line, it's so close to being playable for me. I think it's like minus 140. I could just play it, but I've put some feelers out there on exchanges at minus 130, hoping to get about 1.3 units on it. I don't think live is the way to go, because I think, you know, what could happen is, well, I mean, if Diego has a good start, it drops Volk early. Maybe you could play it live, but I don't think you'd want to in that situation. The only other situation is Volk just dominate from the start, in which case the odds are going to get juiced straight away. So I do think I need to go pre-flop with the Volkanovski money line. It's just being able to get that price. I guess I could see minus 140 as value as well, but I feel like at this stage I could get minus 130, so I'm going to try and get that for 1.5 units, possibly more. Haven't decided. What have you got, Josh?
Yeah, I got pretty much a fairly standard slate here. I mean, I don't think I'm going to deviate from this for about a decade. So, Mikhailov Elliott over 2.5 rounds is a fairly standard way to kind of look at that fight. Mikhailov and Elliott don't really have a finishing like streak going on. Like they don't really trace the finish, and I do think that it's going to be a bit of a tit for tat fight with Mikhailov eventually winning. Rouston moneyline is only there because I think Brundage is garbage. In fact, during my write-up, I have officially changed his last name, Cody's last name, to garbage. So just to finalize how shit he is. Fiziev, Ruffy, round 3 starts. Yes, that pretty much reflects what I said with the fight focus I did with the over 2.5. Round 3 is just an alternative, so you just pick whatever. And then Volk Lopes round 4 starts. Yes, that's a chicken shit parlay leg, and I am a massive chicken shit when it comes to parlay, so I just want to parlay to win, and I feel like round 4 starting is, you know, where it's at. As for the alt bets, Finney points. This one kind of broke my heart, but financially it makes sense, because if Finney does get Malkoon down and does just lay on him just for like 15 minutes or whatever, however long, he's gonna win, obviously, and it's gonna be boring. I'm gonna hate him more, but that's the way it goes. And then Tuivasa KO round 1 is just a simple heavyweight bet. Hooker KO is also just a simple lightweight Hooker bet. You know, just you can't have a Hooker fight and not have a KO in there, right? You can't ignore that completely. And then Lopes KO round 2, 3, or 4, which is a combo round prop for 7.25. Now it's highlighted because it's, well, obviously the main event, but like I reckon I have good vibes about this one. I think we're gonna see an upset. I mean, I can't leave Lopes aside now, and if he was going to win, I reckon it's gonna be by KO in those rounds. I mean, 7.25, come on. And yeah, that's my very short, yeah.
That's it from us. That's our slates. And the next card, is it a UFC Vegas card, which we're going to be doing our early leads for?
Yep, that would be Bautista versus Oliveira. So Mario Bautista versus Vinicius Oliveira.
Perfect. We'll be breaking, we'll be giving our early leads and predictions on that shortly, so please stay tuned for that. And yeah, thank you for listening, and please like and subscribe. That helps with the algorithm. Okay. I've never said the algorithm before. I feel kind of dirty saying it. I don't give a shit about the algorithm, to be honest. That's why I don't usually say it. How do I stop recording?